folks, here we are with a very special interview today. Special for me, that's for sure. I get to interview my dad's life history, Bob Thoren. Bob Thoren, welcome to the Wing Mansion and your life story today.
Thank you.
We're going to start with your early childhood and family background. Tell us where and when you were born.
I was born in Rockford, Illinois, St. Anthony's Hospital, 1924, June 23rd.
But of course you lived in Savannah.
Right. My family, my father and mother lived in Savannah. Dad had a business there.
So they went up to Rockford for your birth and then back to Savannah where you were raised.
That's right.
So tell us about your childhood time down there, the house you lived in, friends, maybe even tell us about your bedroom.
Well, I lived in a number of houses, but the last one that I remember pretty much is the one on 5th Street. There I had my own bedroom, and I really enjoyed my life there. My dad was a real wonderful father, and gosh knows I sure love my mom.
Oh, no doubt. I know that your dad worked for the Milwaukee Road Railroad, and you lived the first 8 years of your life there. One story that I'd heard you tell us before was when you got a little carried away with fireworks. Tell us what happened when you went up the river with some friends on a boat on the 4th of July, and you were about 7 years old.
Well, we were all on a great big picnic up there on an island. And I went up with a bag full of fireworks. And being a smarty, I was out there lighting them and throwing them. And all of a sudden, I didn't get rid of one fast enough and it went off in my hand. And I came running over and showed them to my father. And he says, well, we've got to go get you fixed up. So to get in the motorboat and go all the way back about 3 miles down the river to Savannah. And luckily he was able to get to the doctor, and he cleaned my fingers up and everything and gave me a shot for any serious problems. And then all the way back up. And of course I felt terrible about that because I really kind of put a halt on the festivities at the island.
For the family.
Yes.
But everything worked out and you learned a lesson.
I sure did.
Well, the Savannah branch of the Milwaukee Road Railroad closed during the Depression. Most of those people lost their jobs. Grandpa Rudy, your father, was one of the few fortunate ones that retained his job with the Milwaukee Road, but that included a transfer to Chicago. At that time, he and 2 other compadres or co-workers, Doc Wires and Joe Castle, got transferred to Chicago, but none of the wives wanted to live in Chicago. They all wanted to live in a town where the train went to. In the meantime, you went to live with your grandma and grandpa in Rockford, and your aunt, who was only 1 year older than you, Aunt Alice. Can you tell us about that experience?
At that particular time, I was in the 5th grade, and Mom and I lived with them, and she was recovering from and it was a sickness, but I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't one that was transferable to other people. And but she had to have care, and she took it easy all the time, and it took a while for her to get well. And I went to school at Welch, grade school up there on the west side, and ended up getting part of a gang up there so we could have a lot of fun.
Sure. Well, then in 1932, or I believe it was, Grandpa found a house in Elgin, and Grandma agreed to it, and so you moved to Elgin. You were 9 years old, you went to Lowry grade school, and you found Wing Park Golf Course and started playing golf. How did you get to the golf course?
On a bicycle. I had my clubs and what we called a Sunday bag, made of canvas, and I'd lay it across the handlebars and hold on, and then ride my two-wheeler up Oak Street to Wilcox and on the way out to Wing Park Boulevard and to end up at the golf course. And then I'd play until it was too dark to play, and then I'd go back home.
Wow, I know that one of the stories we've known for years is that after a few years of playing golf with your friends out there, and of course it wasn't as busy as it is now, but you'd bring your sack lunch and throw it up on the starter shed, and you'd tee off and you'd play 9 holes, and you'd play another 9 holes and another 9 holes, and finally you'd stop and took a break and had a root beer and a sandwich, and then you played again until it got dark. And what were the most number of holes you played in one day?
99.
11 times around. That was amazing. I know that the pro out there, Al Husky, said that young Bob Thoren was destined to be a great golfer because he was the first one here in the morning and the last one to leave at night. And sometimes it was dark out, but he'd still be on the ninth green, and he'd light a stick match just to practice his putting to it. You remember doing that?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's pretty amazing. How about, just curious, what do you remember about your grandparents?
Well, on my mom's side, my grandfather and grandmother, they lived in Rockford.
Of course, you lived with them until you were 8 years old.
Uh-huh. And they were super. He ran a repair top shop and reupholstery operation for furniture, and he had his own business up there on the west side.
And tops and seats for old Model Ts and
Yeah.
things like that, and carriages even.
And he also would do new roofing for convertibles. So rebuilt those when the canvas gave out.
How about your grandma?
She was a little on the portly side, but she was a sweet lady, I'll tell you. And she took care of the house and everything, took care of all of us. Always called me Bobsy Boy.
Bobsy Boy.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. How about your grandparents on Rudy's side?
They lived on the east side of Rockford, and they were a little more quiet, and I didn't really get to know them too well other than to say hi to them when we were over to visit at Christmas time or during the summer. And he never came down to Elgin, but she did a few times, and but they were just a little more reserved. And
of course, they were Swedish descent from Sweden, and they became U.S. citizens in 1894. They got married in Rockford in 1892, and I know that she already had a couple daughters, and then they had Rudy, and then of course that was Frida and Stroats. I can't remember all the names, but
but I had also my Aunt Alice, who was Dad's sister.
Right, okay, got it. And Alice on both sides.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're in Elgin, and now you're going to Lowry School, and you start playing the clarinet. And pretty soon, you met your buddy for life, Keith. Tell us about your early years from junior high at Abbott School and high school at Elgin High and all the fun times you spent with Keith Affeld.
We got to be real buddies. We did everything together. In fact, I remember when the two families decided to take us down to get us each a new suit. And we both got the same suit. And they kept telling us, you can't do that. And I said, oh yeah, we like them and we look good in them. So we ended up, both of us, Palm Beach suit. I can't remember anything more than that. But it was a real thing. It was back in those days, you know, the money was tight and you got a suit, it was for a big occasion.
Sure. Well, then if you went to a dance and double dated, you both had the same suit on. That's when it was probably noticed.
Well, we did.
But might have been a benefit to that. What would that be?
Well, they knew we weren't both using the same suit at different occasions. We each had our own.
Yeah, that's true.
Was,
I'm sure that happened in those days.
You betcha.
Oh boy. Well, I know that Keith was a wonderful friend all the way through your entire life until recently when he left us. And of course, he was my godfather and he was David's middle name named after him. Mm-hmm. And he was your best man when you got married. You know, growing up in Elgin, you went to Elgin High School, you became the captain of the golf team, and you won the Upstate 8 Conference, but son of a gun, those darn yearbook staffers never put it in the yearbook.
I know.
I wonder why that was.
Well, I think golf wasn't that big a deal compared to football, baseball, track, and that type of thing. And so their emphasis was on the three bigger sports that have more participants. And in golf, you know, there was only about 6 or 8 of us. And it was just not up to the level that it is at the present time.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they just forgot.
Possibly.
But well, then out of high school, you went to work at Illinois Tool Works, and did Keith work there also?
Yes.
And that's when he had the car that wouldn't shut off unless you put it up against a tree and put it in first gear and let out the clutch.
Yeah.
And it didn't even have a top.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Imagine those nowadays. Well, then of course, World War II. And so you went to enlist, and Keith enlisted. I think he went in the Navy.
He went in the Marines.
Oh, okay. He went in the Marines, and you were going to go in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work out.
Well, to back up a ways, if I may, before that, my uncle invited me down to South Carolina to visit. And he was athletic director at the university. And
this was Rex Enright.
Rex Enright.
He was married to your dad's sister, Alice, that you spoke of earlier.
Yes. He had talked to the commander down there who had an appointment to Annapolis. And when he looked at my record, he told Rex, he said, I'd be happy to make him my appointment to Annapolis. So I had a chance to go there and become an officer in the Navy. But I took the preliminary tests, and my color perception was not normal. And so in the Navy, with all the flags and so forth, they said I didn't qualify, so I didn't get to.
Didn't make it.
No.
Briefly, your Uncle Rex, some interesting history there. He was from Rockford, but he went to school at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And he studied under Newt Rockney in the athletic program. And he went on after he graduated to stay on and be Newt Rockney's assistant coach. And if I'm not mistaken, prior to that, when he was in school, he was the 5th of the 4 horsemen.
That's right.
So if the Gipper hurt his leg for a game, then your Uncle Rex was played his spot.
That's right.
And if one of the other 4 guys, they couldn't play their spot, then he'd play that one. So that was pretty interesting history.
Yes, that's right.
I wonder if he ever met Ronald Reagan for an interview, since he played Newt Rockney.
I doubt it.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. All right, so now you couldn't make Annapolis, but Keith joined the Marines. So then I believe you said, well, I'm serving my country, so you joined the Army.
Well, I tried to get in the Air Corps, and I went through in Chicago, and I had a perfect record up until I got to the color section, and I didn't get the right colors and the right numbers, and they said, I'm sorry, but you got to have that as a pilot. So I was showing the door there too, so I came back home, and then I didn't go into service then until a little later when I went into the Army.
Okay, so you went into the Army, and of course the interesting thing to me about you being in the Army is that I remember asking you, was it tough to get up at 4:30 in the morning when the bugle went off? And you looked at me and said, I'll tell you, I was the bugler. So tell us about that experience.
We were on a report in the company, and the captain was out there talking to us, and he said, "Men," he said, "I got a note from headquarters. We got to have a person for the bugle." And he says, "There's one guy in the group that's always humming and singing and everything, and that's Thoren." He says, "So I'm going to send you over to learn the bugle." Yes, sir. So I did. I learned to play the bugle, and I had the last laugh. Because when it was raining, I'd go out on the balcony and toot the bugle for time to get up, and then I'd stay in the barracks while the rest of the guys went out in the rain.
Well, even when they had to fall in the morning, you got to take your time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they were mad at you for waking them. So you probably had some resentment.
Oh, not really.
But it all worked out. Now then you learned how to drive a tank and fix radios in the Army, I believe.
Yeah.
So a tank battalion.
Yeah, I ended up through a series of schools and different camps. I ended up at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I had a radio school there, and we would repair all the radios and put them into the tanks, and when the tanks had a bad one, we'd replace it and take care of it that way. And so I had that until I was mustered out.
So then you never were deployed, but you said you were really lucky once. You were real close. They took up to the letter S, and all of those guys went to a big battlefield, and most of them didn't come home. But your last name started with a T, so you were the first letter that didn't go.
Well, not quite, but they split the alphabet, and half of them, the top half, went to 609 tank destroyers, and the bottom half, of which I was a member, being T, we were 610. But 609 was shipped over immediately to France, and their first duty was the Battle of the Bulge, and they were pretty bad shape. And we had a towed gun outfit, and they didn't want that. They wanted self-propelled. And so we were sent to the school troops in Fort Knox, and that's where I stayed.
Got it. Of course, then the war ended, you got out of the service, you came back to Elgin, but then you got contact with your uncle down at the University of South Carolina, and off you went on a full golf scholarship to the University of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And thus began your collegiate golf career, Sigma Chi fraternity, becoming president of it, including being the ping pong champion. And of course, your best friend Keith went right along with you and stayed in the athletic dorm. But I remember you saying that because he snored so loud, the guy in the bunk across from him used to take his driver to bed with him so he could bop Keith in the stomach when he started snoring.
We were overstacked in the unit or part of the campus where all the athletes stayed, and we had double bunks. So we had 4 guys in a room that was originally designed for 2. But that's the way it was those days. You know, everybody was. There were so many that wanted to go to school. Keith was extra lucky being the friend because I got him in through my uncle,
Sure.
who was athletic director.
Right. Well, you had a great collegiate career and earned your degree in electrical engineering, but also played some wonderful college golf, including playing against the #1 man from Wake Forest. I think we all know that name.
Arnold Palmer.
Yep. Tell us about the first time you played Arnold.
Well, he had a reputation already, so when I met him, I knew what he was very friendly, you know. And one thing I noticed about him, his hands. He had big hands. He shook hands with me, and mine disappeared in his hands. But he was a very good player, as you well know, and a very, very easy to go and nice fella to know. He really was friendly. I enjoyed playing with him. I only played a few rounds against him. I played in a few tournaments with him and that.
Tell us about a match you played against him.
Oh, well, I lost that one. The match I won was at Forest Lake Club in Columbia, and I squeezed out a 1-up victory on him. But then when I played his course up in North Carolina at Wake Forest, we were tied at the end of 14 holes, and I was real proud. I thought maybe I might sneak in here on him again. But he hit one in the ditch, and he took a 7-iron out of the ditch and hit it 3 feet from the cup. And I lost that hole, and then he birdied the next hole, and I lost that hole, and he parred the next hole, and the next hole, and he beat me 2-1. But it was good to play with. It was very competitive, as you well know.
Sure. Finally, how about when you played in the Atlanta Open and he was there and they assigned you a caddy? And tell us what happened there, because unfortunate misfortune to you on behalf of due to your caddy's mistake.
Oh.
But Arnie went on.
Yeah. It was a Southern Amateur in Athens, and the players were from all of the southern states and some from the neighboring states, so it was a pretty big thing college-wise. And finally, at the last day, I was only 3 shots off from the lead, and we teed up and were playing along, and I came up to the 6th hole there, and I got on a par 5 in 2 shots. And so I lined up my putt, and the caddy stood up there holding the pin, and I putted. And he watched it come, and then I says, pull the pin, pull the pin, pull the pin. And he went, boom, he froze, and the ball hit the pin and bounced back. Instead of a 3, I got a 6 on the hole. 3 shots. I could have tied for the lead. But long time ago, and that was a heartbreaker.
Oh, no doubt. Did Palmer was playing in that?
Mm-hmm.
Did he hear about that, or did you talk to him about it? Or
No.
You don't recall?
He won it.
Oh, yeah, he won it. So
he won it.
That's who beat you by 3.
Well, yeah, I think maybe there might have been a guy in between too. I'm not sure about that anymore. But I was either second or third or fourth.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that's interesting history.
Hang on, Sam. Okay.
Well, then, of course, Keith being down there, Keith got a job as he was working, and you were busy with things, and Keith's company had a Christmas party. And Keith decided to take you along to the Christmas party. And you went to the Christmas party, and you met a co-worker of Keith's named Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened?
Well, we just kind of found a big interest in each other, and we started dating. And one thing led to another, and then over the couple of years I was down there, we dated a lot, and then we got married when I graduated.
Keith was best man, and then you brought her up here.
Mm-hmm.
She'd never been north, born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina, and brought her to Elgin. Lived over at 166 Crystal Street, way upstairs, above Grandma and Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1953, bought the house at 53 South Union Street, another 2-flat. Once again, you and Mom moved upstairs, and Grandma and Grandpa downstairs. Now, of course, in the meantime, you'd won numerous Elgin City titles at Wing Park, but now you are a member at Elgin Country Club, focusing your career there, and, of course, current club champ. Then in 1955, your life changed again. What happened? Stevie Thoren.
Oh, yes. Well, I remember that. I was at the hospital when you were born, naturally, and I was all excited to come home and tell my parents that they were grandparents. And Gloria and I were real proud to have you as a son.
Wonderful. Well, and I'm sure lucky too. Then time went on, you worked at Elgin Machine Works. You started the Robert V. Thoren Company. Systematics had your business in Chicago. Systematics, IBM mailing machines. You built up the business, and then the contract came up for a renewal, and they said, thank you very much, we're taking it over ourselves. So then you had the Robert V. Thoren Company, you sold it to your employees, Al and Jerry, and went back to Elgin Machine Works.
That's right.
Of course, 1960, David was born, and it wasn't but just half a year later, Grandpa Rudy left us.
Yes.
Well, at that time, I started going downstairs and spending more time with Grandma, your mother, and Gloria spent more time with David, an infant. You were busy working and golfing at the country club and events, and then pretty soon started teaching me to play golf. But you golfed at the club, and as everyone said, if Bob Thoren entered the tournament, Bob Thoren won the tournament. Well, we know that from all the trophies in your trophy case and collection, which now proudly I'm able to show and share and explain and tell people the stories about that. Time moves on with David growing up and Stevie growing up, and moved from 53 South Union to Century Oaks in a house, and then pretty soon, as happens to so many families, Gloria and Bob as they got older, grew apart. And so they got divorced in '72, and you went your way, which included me and David and Grandma. And Mother went her way by herself, but it was in town. At some point, David spent a lot of time over there, thought the grass was greener, and then came back. But you and I spent a lot of time with Grandma then, back at 53 South Union. And then pretty soon you met Lori. Of course, she was a gal you knew from way back in high school.
Right.
But you spent about 10 years with her and up to Powers Lake, Wisconsin, and her son Woody spent a lot of time with you. And I had different girlfriends then, and I started working in the record shop and went to college, and David was busy doing things, and all of us played golf, but none of us kept winning like you did. And then time moved on from that era and into the 80s for quite a while, and you didn't have a gal, but you kept winning. And then you met Betty. And Betty was a lady golf champion from Crystal Lake Country Club. And Betty and Bob were a perfect match, and they joined forces, and by golly, if you were playing in a couples best ball tournament, forget it if Bob and Betty entered. I know you told me once that you were played in a tournament down south and you were the eldest entries, but you won.
Yeah.
Well, you had a lot of fun playing with her. You ended up, after the years went on, buying a place down in Diamond Head, Mississippi. Tell us about finding that and what got your interest up.
We were friends of another couple at Elgin Country Club, and he retired before I did. And he was looking to go south with his family on a retirement basis. And he went down and started at New Orleans, and he went from there to Mississippi, to Alabama, to upper Florida, and looking, and he finally found this one place in Mississippi at Diamond Head. He said it was just perfect. 36 holes of golf, prices were good, and the golf courses were excellent, and the weather was good. So they moved there, and so they invited us down to visit, and we fell in love with it right away. And so at retirement time, that's where we went.
Well, I remember when you went to visit and you came back and you were still working. I said, well, did you have a good trip? How'd you like the place? Well, we bought a house. I said, you're kidding. Well, that way you had one ready for you when time came.
Yeah.
Well, a few years after you bought the house and you went down there for a couple weeks a year and so forth. So 1995 arrives and you're playing golf and you and Betty are at the club, and boy, it's going to be retirement time. But you play in the club championship at age 71 and you get to the finals and you're playing a one handicapper, much younger guy. And I know you shared with me that first in the championship flight, the last day is 36 holes. And the first round, you shot a 71 and he shot a 72. And then the two of you, like the gentleman you were, sat and had lunch together. You're one up. You played your second 18 and played just head to head to head all the way down. And you were still one up with one to play, and you both parred the last hole, and you won your 14th title at age 71. That had to be a great feeling.
It sure was. And I felt so lifted by the amount of crowd that followed us at the country club, and everybody, and the cheers I got for winning at my older age.
I imagine that nothing to take away from him, but they were probably all pretty much rooting for you.
I don't know.
Well, and of course, Elgin Country Club is a special place because then it was only a month later that you announced your retirement. And then, as tough as it was, after 43 years of membership, you turned in your resignation to the country club. But unbeknown to you, they weren't going to let that happen. I'm sure you remember that special night.
Yes, the meeting of the membership, and they voted me a life membership at the club. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to use that for the rest of my life. Bless their hearts.
As well as officially naming the 10th hole with a brass flag, Thoren's Hollow.
Well, that was a special. I don't remember exactly how it came about, but the members put it up there.
Well, that's pretty neat. The 10th hole named after you and the only life member, the only one. Well, then time moves on and you're spending your time down in Mississippi and visits up here as we visited you. Sadly, 10 years ago you lost Betty, but you keep playing golf and now you're in your 90s, but you're still breaking your age every time you play. The first time was when you were, I know when you were 70, you shot a 69 at the country club. We got that card there. But of course now your sons and your grandson golf with you. I know once it was a special day a few years ago when all four of us shot in the 70s one day. And I thought, boy, you probably go across the whole state and not see that. You got a pal there with George, the dog.
Yeah, he wants attention.
Well, he gets a lot of it with all of us. But I think that brings us up to date. Of course, you know, you've got two sons and now you've got a grandson, and your grandson's married and has two daughters. And none of us can live up to you, my friend, but we all keep trying.
Well,
and as many people have used this phrase, I learned everything I know from my dad. He just didn't teach me everything he knows. So unless there's something unique that you'd like to add, I think we've gone through a wonderful life story from birth to current.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Dad.